Guys, give it up for the crew from Hellboy, the Crooked Man. Woo! They're not doing that in the other rooms, are they? Huh? Yeah. Mike, I got to start with you. I mean, San Diego Comic-Con must be so special to you. It's the origins of Hellboy are deeply connected with SDCC. Are they not?
Yeah, I mean, it is where we kind of rolled out a teaser of Hellboy a long time ago. So yeah, it's Hellboy is linked to this thing, and probably some of the success of Hellboy is because of the growth of Comic-Con.
What do you remember about that first experience bringing it here and how people reacted?
That was 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And I'm very old. So I don't remember much. Yeah, I don't know. It was such a weird thing. I really honestly don't remember. You'd think I would, because here was this very weird thing with a very weird name. But it's really all kind of, San Diego in general is just kind of a blur.
Yeah.
So I have no specific memories. So at least I would remember if it was bad. So it couldn't have been too bad.
Right. No, it led to everything else with this franchise, right? There's been other Hellboy movies on the order of the obvious here, but this feels like a fresh start for this series. What is gonna really, how is the Crooked Man really going to depart the most from other Hellboy movies we've seen?
I hear a lot of people surprised that it's a horror thing, which is weird because I thought I was doing a horror comic for 30 years. People seem to be going, hey, that horror angle is new. And I'm like, well, clearly you haven't read the books. No, it's the Hellboy movie I always wanted to see. It's very specific to a particular story. In this case, it's my favorite of all the Hellboy stories I've written. It's small, it's dark, and very grounded in a kind of human thing as opposed to a giant overblown fantasy thing.
I think people are probably comparing it to the other movies, and this one, at least from the looks of the trailer we've seen, looks like it leans really heavily into the horror elements, more so than the last ones. Brian, can you talk a little bit about that and sort of what your influences were, if you had any sort of cinematic influences?
No, the influences were really easy, because this one I came into, and we actually had the creator, the original writer of the book, wrote the script.
Yeah.
So and I had the comic book right in front of me, right on my shelf, right on my bookshelf. So I was like, the influences are really easy. Didn't have to reference any other movies. Didn't reference anything. We just went straight to the comic book and tried to adapt it as true and as authentic as we possibly could.
Jack, what spoke to you most about this character? Why do you want to put on those shaved horns?
I mean, it's a once in a lifetime opportunity, right? It doesn't really come across your desk often. So I mentioned before, I was definitely excited, flattered. Really excited, to be honest. And when they sent over originally something to kind of put on tape for them so they could see my spin on it, I was excited. I mean, it had cigarettes in it, guns, and foul language and sarcasm. I was like, sign me up, baby.
Born to play this.
Let's do this.
You're like, I get paid for this?
I don't need a suit.
Yeah, Jeff and Adeline, can you guys set up your characters a little bit for us and tell us how they fit into the story?
Yeah, I play a character named Tom Farrell, who's a guy who sort of grew up in the mountains, and at a young age, he sold his soul to the devil, basically. He fell in love with a witch at a young age and made some terrible decisions. And now he's grown up, he's seen the world, and he's coming back home to try to get his soul back, basically, to confront the devil again and see if he can get his soul back. He's become, terrified of the consequences of that bargain. Yeah. And he happens to very happily run into Hellboy and Bobby Joe.
And on that note, Bobby Joe Song is a rookie BPRD agent who goes on these missions with Hellboy. And this one in particular goes awry. And she ends up being on this journey that is her first time actually being out on the field and doing some field work, and they come across, adventures along the way with monsters.
Great segue, by the way, from one character to the next. I appreciate our editors are going to love that.
Now you do it back to me.
Yeah.
Mike, talk about what it was about the Crooked Man line that made you. This is the like mentioned. This is the first film that you've actually written on the screenplay. What was it about the Crooked Man line that made you want to adapt
like
it?
I said, it was my favorite, and it seemed like it had everything in it. Part of the problem, especially the longer you do a comic, there are so many different things, and some directors, some writers want to pick and choose from all the different stuff and try to cram it together. Whereas I thought The Crooked Man, of all the stuff, it was long enough for a feature film, and it had all the pieces. It was actually more a Tom movie than it was a Hellboy movie, so we did have to bring in one other Hellboy story and kind of splice that in there. But at least that was Chris Golden, my writing partner, and I doing that. We got to put the skeleton of it together. So even if Brian was going to do his spin on our script, we had put the pieces together in the right places, as opposed to somebody else kind of saying, "Hey, this would be a good thing," and you go, "No, clearly you've never read the book." So Chris and I are very obviously. I'm familiar with the comic. He's familiar with the comic. We were able to make it work, even though we had to add this extra element. So. I don't remember the question, so I guess I'm done talking now.
Yeah, it's okay. And Brian, I mean, you talked about the influences being very direct, in the source material, and not really looking externally, but still, finding a tone cinematically is different from the tone of a comic book or a graphic novel. What can you say about how you guys discovered what the tone of this piece would be?
I mean, to a certain extent, movies' tones sort of. They sort of metastasize organically. Like a lot of things go into the tone of a movie. We knew we wanted it really dark. We wanted to light it dark. We wanted it to feel dark. We wanted everything grounded. I didn't want for monsters in the movie, right? Because you got to have monsters in a Hellboy movie. But we didn't want to have sort of purple space creatures with 25 tentacles and 1,000 eyes. Everything I wanted to sort of like feel like it could come from these haunted woods. So it's all real animals, right? It's a spider. It's a snake. It's a crow, and they may be like a little bigger than we normally see those animals, but they're basically just literally animals, right? As opposed to like made up exotic creatures. So a lot of the tone was just sort of like everything we put in, we wanted to sort of feel correct to this universe, feel a part of this universe, and not like Mike was saying, not trying to splice a bunch of crazy things in from other things just to jam them in and make it more complicated, but just to keep really true to sort of like the core feeling of it, which at the base of it, this is a folk horror movie. And I think Hellboy at his best is a folk horror comic book, a folk horror character.
Also, as soon as you introduce a CGI monster, you are taken out of the movie to a certain extent. You go, "Oh, how'd they do that?" And everything, including the Crooked Man, is human or animal. And so you're just able to concentrate entirely on the mood and the atmosphere without kind of going, "Oh yeah, what? But if they made it purple instead of blue, you don't get that. How many eyes are there? You don't get that." That's why Alien worked, because it was so dark and in the shadows that you never made a big show of the big rubber monster. So yeah, that.
And a lot, one of the things we tried to do in keeping with that feeling. There's almost like a throwback feeling. This is a period piece. It's set in the late 50s, right? So that right away makes it feel a lot different from the other movies, which are kind of high tech. And a lot of stuff in the let's call it the superhero space or the comic book space tends to be very high tech and futuristic or whatever. So just putting it in 1959 automatically strips all of that away, and in keeping with that tonally, we want to do practical effects as much as we could. So there's a kind of like very hopefully soon to be notorious scene that we're going to show tomorrow at the panel that could have been done badly with CG. But we thought, like, let's just go the Clive Barker route and do it like real in the room, slimy and grimy and disgusting, and let's just do it, and I think it's so much better for that.
Mike, what were the lessons that you gleaned from the first three Hellboy movies that you were able to bring to this one, to apply to the Crooked Man?
Well, I mean, what can I say? What I learned is I've got to be in a position to say we're doing this, as opposed to, "Sure, kids, do whatever you want. I did it my way. You guys do it your way." Easier to say that than to live with it. No, I was very glad that that they came to me and said, "We're going to do this." And I said, "Yeah, if you want me involved, the only way I'm going to be involved is if you do this movie, and I have this much I mean, I'm never going to have 100% say, but I did say, if you want me involved, it's got to be this. And, obviously they want to be involved. So.
Yeah. Jack, big shoes to follow. Obviously, you're looking at what Ron and David did in prior roles. Were you curious? Did you look at what they did, or did you want to approach this from a really fresh place?
Fresh place for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I did see the first Hellboy, but no, my process is my process. I kind of just try to stay in the present, see the script, look at the comic book, work intimately with the director, and find my subtle moments where I can bring my thing to it as much as you can, even though most of it is done for you, respectfully, but where you can, in a subtle way, add your personality to it. Hopefully we accomplish that.
Yeah. How did your perspective on this character change from the moment you came on to wrapping production? How did that evolve?
Say that again.
Like, how did your perspective on the character shift from the moment this came to you to spending all this time with this character and embodying him?
Ooh, I was glad to be done. It was
Took a
great.
lot out of you?
Oh, it took a lot out of me, but it was awesome. It was just, it was work 5-6 days a week. First one there, last one to leave, and it was like it was tears of joy and exhaustion, really. But it was a miracle, really, that we finished it. It was just a once in a lifetime experience. I've never had an experience. I've done a little bit of prosthetic, but not to the extent where I'm wearing it every day. And definitely the acting had to be adjusted because you have this buffer between you and your natural face. So it was like a tricky thing of like, is it reading, is it not? And you got to trust the director, and trust is such a funny thing, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know if I answered your question.
No, for sure.
But
Yeah, no, and Jeff and Adeline, can you talk about how he sort of set the tone with that kind of approach and what you saw from him on set?
It was a funny experience because I think that Jack is even underselling how hard that job is. He was there for much, much longer hours than the rest of us. He's there every day. And we had the experience. It's an incredible gift to the rest of us, the amount of work that Jack did, because we show up 4 hours later and he's already Hellboy. So for 2.5 months, we got the benefit of working directly with Hellboy. It becomes a very immersive experience as actors, We saw Hellboy a lot more than we saw Jack during the course of the shooting,
Yeah.
And that's such a gift. And the environments, the incredible production design, so much of our job is done for us by, then you're trying to step into this beautiful, incredibly curated, terrifying world and stay alive and sort of respond naturally to it. But so much of the work comes from the environment and from this performance. And from the other, I should really shout out the villains of this film, because we had incredible performances from Martin, who played the Crooked Man, and Leah, who played Effie Kolb, two villains that leap off the page. I think they're both so well written. They're very, very memorable. They certainly stuck out to me when I was first reading the book, and I think their performances were so strong that a lot of my job particularly was just to show up and be scared, and it was easy, and to feel some comfort in this guy's presence, which was also easy because he's a very natural, easy leader.
Yeah, I mean, just to add to that, I think what was really cool about it's interesting you say this thing of you have this mask, so it was hard for you. You had to adjust your acting, but I felt like Jack brought a very human Hellboy to the table, which was really cool to act opposite of. Like, yes, it was very nuanced, but I think you did a fantastic job still really much conveying this very authentic emotions, even through, the suit that you were wearing. Also shout out, of course, to Hannah, who plays Cora, and Joseph Marcel, who plays the Reverend. They bring so much to this movie. Again, Bobby is in this the only character that isn't in the comic book. So for me, it was also cool to see the comic book and then see all these people that look like the people in the comic book, with some help and prosthetics, and of course, but yeah, amazing.
Yeah.
It's nice that because we, created Bobby Joe for the movie, but she fits so well. It's not like watching the movie and going, oh, here's where something doesn't jibe with the comic. It really, she did such an amazing job. And it felt so natural to the story. It's kind of one of those, kind of wish I'd thought of that. So yeah, now I'm thrilled with that. That's not gonna be one of those, the studio made us put it, a pretty girl in. Though the movie does benefit from that quite a bit.
I actually have a question. For you two, like, how did you guys feel about the chemistry between the two characters of Hellboy and Bobby Joe? Like, because you guys had a lot of fun with that.
I think it was very like nuanced and sweet. I don't think even in the relationship that they have was never overdone in the way that I think they care for each other. They protect each other in different instances. They grow with each other, but it's all it's not for show. It's just very understated, I would say. What do you think?
What was the question?
Why'd you,
I had a
why are you
hard
looking
time
at me
in high
like
school.
Yeah, I don't know. I forgot.
The chemistry?
Like the two
Working
characters.
together?
But I think specifically our characters, like their relationship to one another, like Bobby Joe and Hellboy, and how
Man, I mean, it's open to interpretation, right? It's
Yeah.
like, sometimes I was like, does this guy have a crush on her? Other times, he has these human feelings that he probably hides or really doesn't have the privilege to feel because of how he looks, right? So maybe it's misplaced. I think he's just trying his best to be a half human, And I think it was a great chemistry.
And that's what it is so human because he's so protective. And there are a
Yeah.
couple scenes, and the ending, and it's just nothing is overdone, nothing is too spelled out. It's entirely there's no conversation that has to carry their relationship. It's entirely how they react to scenes together.
Well, the movie looks cool as hell, and I cannot wait to check it out. Have a great panel tomorrow, guys. Thank you for coming in here. Once again, give it up for the crew from Hellboy the Crooked Man. Thank you, guys.